Hello, everyone. This is Martin Willis, your host of the Antique Auction Forum podcast, and I'm real excited about today's show. And you know why? Because you won't hear any other podcast that was recorded live at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts Paul Revere Time Capsule opening. Now, this happened on January 6th, and I was joined by my good friend Dan Sullivan of Gemmer.com. It was a real exciting event. It was a part of American history, and we were right there recording it. There was a lot of great energy in the room, and you're going to hear some amazing conversations I had with incredible people, including the woman who actually opened the box, Pam Hatchfield, and she'll be on later in the podcast. So sit back and have yourself a good listen. Welcome to the podcast at AntiqueAuctionForum.com. This show is sponsored by Gemmer. Collect and connect at Gemmer.com. This is Martin Willis, and I'm here with Dan Sullivan. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing well. How are you?
And we are here at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston at the Paul Revere Time Capsule opening. How exciting is that? And Dan's with Gemmer.com. And thanks for joining me. This is going to be a lot of fun, huh?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, we kind of know what's in it, so there's not too much of a surprise, but it should be pretty awesome to see all these things opened.
Here again at the Museum of Fine Arts, and with a couple of very important people involved in this Paul Revere event, and Carol Cornelissen. And what are you the director of?
I'm the commissioner for the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance.
And we're also with Bijan. And would you say your name and what your title is, please?
Bijan Mohammadipour, Director of Engineering for DCAM.
All right. And I want to talk to you especially tonight because from what I understand, you've been searching for this for 25 years. Did I hear that right? And you've been looking through documents, and it must have been pretty exciting to finally find this.
Well, not necessarily searching for it for 25 years. We located 25 years ago, and we've been monitoring it for 25 years. But over 25 years, not that we just monitored it, we researched a lot of the documents, a lot of historical documents, looking through all the archives, getting all the information that what actually contains within the box. We located the actual inventory of 1855 when they had to actually remove the time capsule for some construction work that they had to do the foundation of the State House at that time. They located because there were coins that they found on the dirt they didn't know themselves at that time. And that was 6 years or so after they had put it in 1795. So we located all the document with the complete description of all the items in the box. And from there, we've been monitoring it to just make sure everything is fine and good.
Now, I'm going to ask you, Carol, a couple of questions in a minute, but I want to direct a few to Bijan, and that is, it's going to go back in the building, yes?
Well, it will go back. It's a time capsule that belongs to the State House, and it will go back into the same location of the cornerstone that it's been set for it in 1795.
When it's put back, are there going to be any sensors of any type to make sure that it's well kept and safe?
No, usually we don't. You don't provide sensors as far as making sure that there's no water infiltrations or any damage in that. The technology today allows you to just build a box to kind of protect it from any type of water infiltrations.
And the question that comes to mind right off the bat: what don't we know what's in there?
Well, what we've got, it's the write-up of the different plate, especially there's a plate from Paul Revere in there, there's a seal from George Washington in there, and we don't know the shape and how actually the silver plate look like. We know what the description is in it because of what they wrote in 1855, but seeing it would be a different thing because we have not seen it. We just know what is written on it. But we don't know the condition of it, nor how it's really been described on it.
And one thing I was thinking about is how how well the documents will be preserved, what's left of them, and there's really no information on those documents at this time, is there?
When you say there's no information on a document, I'm not following that, but as far as the condition of it, no. Well, I mean, that's the reason you got the conservators to look at it and just see the condition of it as soon as it gets opened up, because it has not been opened since 1855. So the condition is based on x-rays and everything else so far. They are together. We don't see too much damages through the x-ray, but you don't know until you're opened up.
Right. And Carol, what's your connection with working with this whole procedure and getting this done?
Well, it's the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance that, under BJ's leadership as Director of Engineering, that we have been responsible for really arranging what we needed to do to pull out the stone that had the time capsule embedded in it. And so once it was clear that in order to really deal with a water infiltration problem, another part of BJ's job, monitoring that at the State House, that we really had to begin to do that repair work. Then it was clear to us that, we needed to, embark on this project. So I'm not directly involved in it, but certainly, as part of the management team of DCAM and as the commissioner, work with BJ and his team to make sure this gets pulled off successfully.
So how are you guys feeling in anticipation of opening this? Obviously, it's something you've been working on for a long time.
I can tell you very easily that I did not sleep last night. I just could not sleep. I had a lot of... I had been dreams about John Adam and Washington, because I've been reading the books about this for so many years and everything else. When it gets to this point, it's a dream come true. It's when you are able to put a small wrinkle, but still is a wrinkle, into the history. And you go back into the foundation of the country, and you go back into that. History is something different that we respect it with a lot of care. And that's the reason we took this challenge for 25 years, and I'm glad to see it now. They're coming up, and it's exciting.
It's very exciting. I'm someone who was trained in history, went to undergraduate school and majored in history and graduate school for that matter. So history is close to my heart. American history is very close to my heart. And really being able to see some real live documents and artifacts from 1795, it's really mind-blowing. So we're all excited. I would say our whole organization is really excited. I'm also excited to know what both Governor Patrick and Governor Baker are going to want to put in the new time capsule.
Do we have any idea what they're going to put in?
Right now we have no idea, but we're anxious to find out what their thoughts are.
I hope it's not a Beanie Baby or something.
I'm particularly excited for this too. I grew up in a house. My dad is heavily involved in the antiques industry. He's an antique dealer, and he's actually an appraiser on Antiques Roadshow. So, when I was a kid, anytime we had free weekends, we were going to museums and doing all kinds of things like this. So this is, I'm particularly excited. I have a strong interest in history, if you will. So I'm pretty psyched to see how this looks.
Okay, we're waiting for the time capsule to be open. It's 6:05, and someone just came out and said, we're waiting for the governor, Deval Patrick. So that's it for the clips before the opening of the box. I tried to do a play-by-play during the opening, but people were turning around and looking at me. I was making too much noise. So the next clips that you're going to hear are post-opening of the Paul Revere time capsule. All right, I'm with Jim. Jim, we're standing here in line waiting to go up and see the coins and the artifacts taken out of the box. Pretty exciting, don't you think?
It's very exciting. It's a historical day to witness historical documents that we haven't seen in over 150 years and were placed in by our founding fathers.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about, you mentioned who you thought Paul Revere was. He was a statesman. He was really important. And by the time this went in, it's hard to say whether that plaque was actually made by him. What do you think about that in general?
Well, I think Paul Revere was definitely by that time a senior statesman of the Commonwealth and of the country. Whether he had any role in the production of the plaque, we don't know. Maybe they'll figure this out through the conservation efforts. But just the thought of it is exciting. Thinking that he could have had his hand not just in the implementation of the capsule, but also the actual production of that artifact, that silver plaque. It's fascinating to think about.
Now, I know there's supposed to be some type of like cards or something in one of the newspapers. That'll be exciting when they slowly take that apart. In general, what would you say the most exciting thing was that they pulled out? Myself, as the plaque.
The plaque was very exciting, but I also was impressed by the fact that there was a presidential coin for George Washington. Represents not just his presidency, but also spoke a little bit about being the general of the Continental Army during the Revolution. You can't get any more historic than George Washington and the Revolution, so that's a very significant piece, I think.
Absolutely. So they were talking about earlier, the pine tree coin, valued, if it went to auction today, at $75,000. But this is a little bit different story when something like this comes out of the box. That is the time capsule. What would you? Whoops.
There they are.
Oh yes. They're all coming out of the room right now. Just in general, everyone's always trying to put prices on things, and what would you say would add to a price of? I'm just getting an opinion only.
Honestly, I think the contents are priceless because of what it represents. Represents our nation, our history, and the soul of our country. And you really can't put a price on history. It doesn't matter whether it's a coin, a document, a handwritten note. It's something that's significant, and I couldn't even think of what it's worth. To me, it's priceless. For me, who's a historian buff, especially U.S. history, it's priceless. To others, it may just be a coin, but those coins aren't just pieces of metal with dates on. They represent not just our nation, but what we were before that. We were a colony. We were part of a different culture, a different nation. So it goes from the 1600s all the way up to the 1850s, before the nation was divided. So it really represents the founding of our early part of our nation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So, BJ, we're back again after the opening, and you're grinning ear to ear.
And then some. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
So how exciting was it to be right up there?
Very, very exciting. When you're right there and you make the connection to the history, there's nothing that you can describe it. Those are the moments that we have numbers for every unit of whatever we are trying to guess. But when we don't have no numbers to describe it, we use infinity, because nothing matches up the numbers that we understand. That, I call it infinity. For me, that's how I felt. I cannot put a measurement into it.
I love that. Now I have to ask this. What was your favorite thing that came out of that box?
Every single piece. There's when you get it's a search. It's what I have done for 25 years. And when you look at it, it's like little kids. You don't differentiate between your kids. You love them all because who they are. And that's what it is. It's a box that I've been after for 25 years. And it makes me proud to just see it all together. The whole family comes together.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much. Okay, we're standing in line going up to the contents, and I'm here with, in your name, please?
John Roberts.
Now, John, what brought you here, and how excited were you to get here tonight?
It's very exciting. I work for Walsh Brothers. We're a general contractor, and we were hired to actually get the stone out of the wall. So that's why we got invited here today.
Oh, how about that? Boy, that must have been exciting to actually look inside and see this thing sitting there.
Well, I actually wasn't there. Our superintendent, Peter, was.
Hey, Peter.
Hi.
You're on the spot now.
Peter McKay with Walsh Brothers. Hi there.
And what was it like when you actually saw the box?
A very exciting and very humbling, and we were all so excited to be a part of history. We were aware of that. We certainly couldn't let everyone that was working along with us know that leading up to it. We were just taking some stones out of the wall for a water infiltration project, and as it became aware that it was a much more in-depth project than that, we really added to the excitement, especially the day that they were removing the capsule from the stone that we had removed that morning.
I bet. Okay, I know we have to get up in line. Anyway, thank you both.
You're welcome.
Thanks for talking, Peter.
Thank you.
On the phone now, 2 days after the event, with the head of objects conservation at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and she is the nice lady that opened the box. Pam Hatchfield, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm recovering nicely.
I know it was a pleasure to meet you the other night, and you were getting pulled when I was trying to talk to you in about 6 different directions, and you also looked like you were floating at the same time.
I think I was, actually. It was a very, tense operation. We don't usually work in that kind of public view, dealing with the unknowns of what we might find. I mean, it's a very unusual project, to say the least. Let's say unique.
Yes, and I did have a few questions along those lines. But first of all, what was it like to have this honor to actually be able to do that? And also, what was it like to have the responsibility?
Well, I was fully aware of the privilege that it was to actually participate in this project, and not only to excavate that box, but also to open it and be the first one to see what was inside in 160 years. I mean, I have worked on objects of incredible importance and significance over my years as a conservator, but nothing this important in this way, and nothing that seems to have captured the imagination of the American public in such a way. And I have been thinking a lot about that since the moment we excavated it. But as far as the practicalities of it, I was incredibly nervous earlier in the day. Mm-hmm. And when we work on objects and cultural heritage, we really focus intently on the material at hand. And I was so grateful that Michael Como was there to talk, because at certain points we're not used to talking while we're working. We're focusing intensely on the materials and on the little tiny hints that it's giving us every second that we have our hands on it. So it requires intense concentration. So in a way, I was made very much calmer once I could actually do the work, because I didn't have to anticipate anymore. I could just be in that relationship with the object itself.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I never even thought of that. Someone I was speaking to yesterday asked me, I thought was a unique question, and that is, do you believe that this is the most important time capsule that is known in the United States?
You know, I'm not an expert on time capsules, but it certainly sounds like people think it is. I wouldn't be the best person to answer that question. One of our curators is looking into time capsules for me, and actually he found that there have been time capsules put in other buildings in the past. Nothing this old, of course, but 2 of them that he found reference to have actually been made out of glass. Wow. One was for a bank, and I can't remember what the other one was for, but I thought that was fascinating, because glass can be a very stable material depending on its composition, but I thought that was a very interesting material. So I'm personally going to start researching time capsules, because I don't know very much about them. In terms of what's been said about this one so far, I think it is the oldest New World time capsule, at least that's come into the news. So I don't quote me on it, but that's what's being said.
So what is the closest experience you've ever had of anything like this? Has there been anything up to par?
Well, you know, I've been on excavations in Egypt, and it is an incredible thrill to turn over a block of stone that has paint on it that nobody's seen in several thousand years. And there's that kind of moment when you catch your breath. I mean, yes, you're a professional. You're concerned about the materials and what they're going to do when they're exposed to the air for the first time, but you can't help but catch your breath. And it was a similar moment for me. I mean, you know, we handle objects of great value and importance every day, and we think about them, I suppose, in a way that a doctor might think about his patient before surgery. You can't become terrified that it's, you know, the mayor or the governor. It's material that you have been trained how to handle and treat. And so that's, you know, we have to think about it like that instead of thinking about how important it is and how exciting it is. We treat everything as if it is that important and with that same degree of care. And so your kind of training kicks in, and I suppose it's your, what do they call it, the motor memory? Muscle memory, in a way that athletes' muscle memory kicks in. Your training kicks in, and you have, you know, good solid hands and very careful hands, and you watch for these signs of danger. And that's what I was looking for. I was really, my greatest fear was not that I couldn't handle the material or that I might damage something, but that it would not be able to be removed from the box, and that everybody who had come to see this thing would have to go away unsatisfied. And that was actually my greatest fear of all.
Oh, I bet. And that was one of the questions I had, was wondering what you would have done if that happened. And you just would have to, it would just have to go on hold, right?
Yeah, I mean, if things had been stuck to the top of the lid, or if the paper was really in bad condition and was powdering, or was really stuck to the sides of the box and couldn't be easily extricated, I would have had to say, you know, I'm so sorry, that's all we can do. And we could have perhaps focused on the 5 coins that were in the plaster and talked more about the X-rays and that sort of thing. But I was hopeful that things would that the paper at least would be in pretty good condition, because it was made at this juncture just before they started using acidic materials in the paper. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't know about the coins, because the coins had been treated by acid, and some of them certainly show signs of having suffered from that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the future conservation. But so that was actually a Plan B. You had the Plan B in place.
Yes, but it would have been a very poor substitute for Plan A.
Yes, absolutely. Can you describe to the listener what was the preparation you did before the box? Because when the box came out in front of all of us, I saw the screws were lifted up. Mm-hmm. So what was that like?
So we knew that it could take a very, very long time just to loosen the screws, and we knew that there was some material around the edges, and they had called this in 1855 hermetically sealed. So we didn't know exactly what that meant, but we knew that it was probably something that couldn't quickly be accomplished. So the first thing we did was we did our X-rays and some analysis and determined what the box was made of, which was brass, not bronze, not copper, but brass. And the screws were brass, and that the material around the outside contained lead and was, in fact, lead solder. And I had been very hopeful that it was actually going to be some kind of linseed oil and lead, glazing compound like they use on windows, which would have been easier to get through. And I also didn't know how much of the solder had gone into the join, where the top of the box meets the base. So the first thing that we did was we put this on a drill press, and we did not use anything automated or electric on the drill press, but we very carefully put pressure down using the drill press, and then turned the screws manually, very slowly and carefully, lifting up on the pressure to try to raise the screws. And I did put a tiny bit of ethyl alcohol in the areas around the screws and tried to clear them of plaster beforehand. And that process took about half a day to loosen the screws. Wow. So nobody would have wanted to sit around watching that happen, watching that paint dry. And then I very carefully chiseled around the outside to remove some of the corroded lead solder. And then finally, I took very, very thin blades and worked them into the join and went around the box, around the join repeatedly so that I could try to loosen it up. It was clear that there was solder in there, and I was cutting through the solder with these very fine steel blades. And that took about 2 days, actually.
Really? Wow.
So, and then the moment at which it, I could see that it was going to lift, was a very exciting one, and it was quite tantalizing. And we tried to see a little bit, but we didn't really want to open the lid until the big moment came.
Right. Now, while we're at this juncture here, can you describe, I tried to do sort of like a sportscaster, a play-by-play while this was happening, but I just couldn't because I had to be quiet. It just didn't come out. Let's talk about the layers and getting through them. I know I believe it was 5 layers of newspaper.
Yeah.
Have the newspapers been unfolded since?
No, and actually I don't know that they are going to be unfolded.
Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility there could be something inside, or are you going to X-ray them?
Well, we can do some other X-ray types of imaging to determine whether there is, in fact, something inside. A lot of people have asked if we're going to unfold them, and that's really up to the Commonwealth. They will decide if they're going to be opened or not, unfolded or not. I personally would be inclined not to unfold them because their primary importance is that they were folded up and put in that box, not so much that they are newspapers from 1855, which we have other examples of. So they're not unique as newspapers, but they're unique as folded objects that were put into that box. So I would be hopeful that they wouldn't be unfolded. And similarly, we'll have a discussion about the coins because this is not purely or even about their numismatic value. It's really about their historical value. And you know, we're not so happy about the fact that they were treated with acid, and their surfaces were really, they were burnished. They were treated with acid and then burnished, so they don't have their original surfaces anymore, which is really a shame.
It is. Yep.
So we would be very circumspect about trying to clean them because we wouldn't want to, have people in another 160 years come back and say, oh, my God, look what they did. We've lost all this information. We know that there's going to be a lot more information accessible to us about these materials, about everything, as technology improves. And I would be so my aim would be to stabilize anything that's actively deteriorating, to try to isolate those materials from one another so that they don't damage each other, and then to provide a very pure environment for them.
Before they go back into the corner.
Before they go back, yeah. And I think there's discussion about wanting to add other materials into the time capsule, and because the time capsule doesn't really have room for much else in it, I'm guessing that we will, there may be another enclosure which might be included in a slightly larger enclosure that will still fit in that original cavity in the stone.
Oh, that would make sense.
That is all to be debated yet, and that certainly is not my decision. The Commonwealth will decide. The Mass Archives will be the ones to decide, and I guess the state will be the ones to decide all of that. Okay,
so just in the because of the time involvement here, can we just kind of quickly go over with what came out sort of in order? We had so many layers of paper to the 1855 coins.
Yes. Yep. So I'm looking at the pictures right now, and there's the Boston Daily something, the Evening Traveler, I think it's the Boston Daily Bee, and then another two that I don't, is it one or two, that I don't know what they are. Then there is this first page from the records of the colony by Shirtless, and that has a very distinct impression of a lot of coins on it, as do some of the newspapers. And then all of the coins, the 1855 coins were on top in 2 layers, and then the 1795 and earlier coins were below. And then, then there was the plaque, and the front, or one side of the plaque had been inscribed probably by Paul Revere. I'm looking now at the types of lettering very closely to see whether we see close parallels between other examples of his lettering and the lettering that's on this plaque. And then in 1855, they inscribed the back of that plaque because they were very pressed for time, apparently, so they didn't have time to get their own plaque. And so in 1855, it was again inscribed to commemorate the reinterment of the time capsule. There also was an inscription on the interior of the lid,
right,
which was very interesting, and that was by the brass founder, and his name was written as Andreas J. Gavitt, brass founder, number 12 Hawthorne, I think it's Hawthorne Street, Boston, 1855, Mass. So he inscribed the inside of the cover of the box.
That was pretty exciting to me, actually. Because that was an unexpected.
Right. So we're trying to research who he is at this moment. And also there seems to be some kind of resin that the box was also sealed with. It's a very sort of brownish, shiny resin. It could be shellac or animal glue or something like that clearly the box was sealed with before the soldering took place. So I think that's what they meant when they said hermetically sealed. They did a very thorough job. And we'll be analyzing all of this and looking very closely at the coins for the Commonwealth so we can give them as much information as possible.
Now, when I was standing in line to actually go up and view the objects, of course the subject of value came up. And but it was interesting to hear because most people, I pushed a couple of people to, well, what do you think? And the same thing came up as priceless. No one wanted to actually say, and that is a very hard topic when it comes to something like this because there's 2 values of the value of the item itself. For instance, the pine tree coin there, the 1652 coin, is pretty valuable, but once it comes out of that box, there's just no way anyone, if you had to put insurance on that box, it would be very, very difficult, let me put it that way, as an appraiser.
Yeah.
You would not be able to come up with comparables.
Are you an appraiser, among other things?
Yes.
So you know all about that because we have a pine tree shilling on view in our galleries, and I'm sure it has a particular value, but I did a little searching around on the Internet, and I found pine tree shillings that varied tremendously in price. And, you know, as I said, for the newspapers, these are valuable coins. Perhaps the 1795 and earlier coins are less valuable numismatically because of their condition, because they've been so aggressively cleaned. But on the other hand, they have incredible value because of who placed them in this box or who placed them in the original time capsule.
Exactly. Now, getting back to the plaque, I'm sure you're going to really research that. You know, my feeling is, in particular, that was the most interesting piece and beautiful piece that came out of the box. But that's my own opinion. You know, Paul Revere, I've had a piece of his before in the past, and I'm surprised that he did not stamp it anywhere, you know, but maybe he was just removing his whole ego type of thing out of the whole situation. You know, it's hard to say.
I don't know. I mean, we looked through his day books, and we so far have not been able to find a record of doing this piece, but maybe because he was doing it more or less for himself, he didn't charge anybody for it. And I'm guessing it was probably done in a big hurry because I think a tremendous amount of attention had been given to the ceremony of the day and the procession and the elaborate nature of all of that. And perhaps the time capsule was kind of an afterthought because it was certainly not very well protected. I mean, lead is a great protector of other metals, but just putting these things in between 2 sheets of lead, wrapping the whole thing in leather and putting it right on the ground does not suggest a tremendous amount of forethought. So I may be reading too much into this, but it seems like that could have been a kind of last-minute addition to the festivities of the day. I'm also very interested in the Masonic aspect of this because the Masons, rightly so, were very prominent. These men were all, or almost all, Masons, and that was a very important organization for them at the time, and they were the ones who laid this. So Paul Revere had just become the Grand Master of the Masons, and Sam Adams was also a Freemason, so there's a lot of pomp and circumstance related to them, and also I think there is a Masonic date on here. There's 4th day of July, Anno Domini 1795, it says on the plaque, and then it's AL 5795, which I'm presuming is a Masonic date.
Oh.
So I think that's very interesting.
That is, wow. Now, for the listener, will they be able to actually come to the museum eventually to see these displayed?
Yes.
Any ideas
Yes.
of when and how long?
They will be displayed. The Secretary of the Commonwealth has said that he would love to have that happen, and we would also. But we haven't had a chance to meet since Tuesday night, so they've been very busy down at the state with all the inauguration and everything. So I suspect that we'll meet next week and begin to formulate a plan. I mean, the first thing is to determine what needs to be done to these objects in terms of conservation, and that will depend on what they would like to have happen. And then we can formulate a plan. But I suspect in the next several months we will be able to display them, but I really don't know for sure.
Sure, okay. And let's talk about your background just briefly. We're right near the end of the show here. And also, if you would, talk about the American Institute of Conservation.
Yes, the American Institute for Conservation is the membership organization for conservation professionals in the United States. And when I say conservation professionals, we are conservators, conservation scientists, collections care specialists, people who have been trained to handle, examine, and treat works of art and artifacts. And that includes a broad range of people and a broad range of knowledge. So a conservator such as myself would be trained. There are a few graduate programs, and we are trained in chemistry, studio art, and art history, archaeology, anthropology, even this kind of thing. And we specialize in specific areas. For example, I am a sculpture and objects conservator, and that includes archaeological objects all the way up to contemporary objects, although there are conservators who specialize in contemporary art because it's such a particular field with a lot of electronics and media, this kind of thing. So there are furniture conservators, frame conservators, textile conservators, photograph, paper conservators, paintings conservators, of course, and we are all trained in a specific specialty or a related range of specialties. And if people would like more information about conservation, or they would like to find a conservator in their area, or see some of the programs that AIC offers, they can go to www.conservation-us.org, and I'll send you that. I just sent you an email, actually, with that information, a little blurb about AIC. But it's a wonderful organization, and it's a great resource. There are a lot of online resources available through AIC, and full disclosure here, I'm the president of the organization right now. So.
Okay, so this will be all in the show notes for the listener. They can go to the website, which is antiqueauctionforum.com. And all this information will be in the show notes with the links. One last question for you. How has this whole thing changed your life? Or is it too early to know?
How has it changed my life? I would say it's been one of the most fulfilling things, one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my professional career, maybe the most exciting thing in my professional career, to be associated with this and feel like I really do have some small place in history. I mean, I think what excites the public about this so much is that they suddenly see themselves as part of a continuum of history. And the fact that these objects can excite people and make them feel as if they are walking in the footsteps of the forefathers of our country, I think is so exciting and important. And my message to them is to look around them, because it's all around us. You can have this sense of belonging and continuation pretty much anywhere you go. You see a sculpture in a park, you see a monument in a park, you see a building edifice. You come to the museum, you look at these things, you think about who made them, how they were made, why they were made, how is it that they're still surviving and coming down to us, and connect with the history behind them. And it's an incredibly enriching experience, especially in our daily lives where we're so hooked into technology and, disposable culture.
That's right. And, these things need to be preserved to pass along,
right.
So hopefully that will. I'm going to have one more last question for you, even though
Sure.
I just said that was the last one.
Okay.
If you had to guess, when do you think this thing will be opened again? And why?
Well, I like to think that there is going to be much better documentation this time, that they'll still be able to read in 160 years. But I don't know. It seems to be in kind of 160-year intervals so far at the moment. I guess when there's another leak in the building. No, I think there may be a specific date in. Well, I don't know that at all. There might be a specific date that the state will determine it should be inspected at. Also, if we're looking at some kind of an anoxic enclosure for it, in other words, an enclosure that excludes oxygen, which is one of the prime agents of deterioration for these kinds of materials, the lifetime of the container, and that's a big if, we don't know whether we'll do that or not. The lifetime of the seal of the container will only last so long, so it may be decided that it should be opened in 160 years or 100 years, but we have no idea. Hopefully it will not be totally by accident as it was the first time. The second time it was because of the water infiltration project at the State House, and there was such concern about whether the box could have been damaged. There were these reports and documents saying that there was a time capsule in the cornerstone, but nobody really knew for sure until the engineering firm Simpson, Gumpertz, and Hagel did this ground-penetrating radar. So we thought we found something there, but we didn't really know till we got in there what it was, whether it could come out, what condition it would be in, and so forth.
How exciting. Well, thank you so much. It's been
You're
a
welcome.
real
Thank you,
honor
Martin.
and a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for having me, and best of luck.
Thank you. So this is Martin Willis, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this podcast at AntiqueAuctionForum.com. This show was sponsored by Gemmer,